Hello and welcome to sunny Melbourne, Australia for the start of the 1998 Formula One World Championship. We are here at the tricky Albert Park Street Circuit, the first round in what is destined to be an exciting season of motorsports action. 16 rounds of racing spanning 4 continents, featuring some of the most iconic venues to ever hold cars on track. Who will take this year's coveted world title? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain, it won't come easily. The first race of the season is always a gamble. It's the first time these vehicles have been tested against each other in a competitive environment. Expect a few upsets, whether it's the cars or the drivers who fail first. Speaking of drivers, it's all eyes on 1997 World Champion Jacques Villeneuve. The title came down to the line last year. Will he be pushed the same this season? Can he defend successfully, or will someone else use this opportunity to take the title for themselves? McLaren and Ferrari look competitive on pace this year. Ferrari have secured ace pilot Michael Schumacher. He leaves his twice championship-winning Benetton team, and what has so far been a fruitless relationship with the prancing horse. I'm sure he'll be looking to change his luck this year. McLaren as well have been without a title in 7 seasons' time. Hakkinen and Coulthard aim to end that drought this year. It's all still to play for. The true favorites will establish themselves in due time, but it's not all about title ambitions. We have 2 rookie drivers this year. Alexander Wurz makes his first full-time drive after a podium finish in last year's British Grand Prix, and Minardi bring with him Tobias Gecki to his first ever Formula One race. Looking at the starting grid then, Coulthard edges out Hakkinen, behind them both Ferraris of Irvine and Michael Schumacher. Villeneuve and then Ralf Schumacher round out the top 6. Giancarlo Fisichella followed by Johnny Herbert, Damon Hill, and Joe Alesi round out the top 10. Frentzen, Magnussen, Wurz, and Barrichello, followed by Nakano, Gecki, Rosset, and Pedro de la Rosa. And then finally, Mika Salo and Verstappen round out the bottom half of the grid. The drivers are just making their way around the track now. Defending world champion Jacques Villeneuve qualified 5th today, but he'll be starting in 15th after a 10th place grid penalty. It's not the start of the season that he would have wanted, but he has plenty of time to make up ground throughout the duration of this race. David Coulthard then, finding that pole position grid spot after his fantastic qualifying, over half a second faster than his teammate Mika Hakkinen. It's enough talking for now though. As soon as those lights go out, we are underway for 29 laps of racing. 5 lights. And away we go. It's a good reaction from David Coulthard. Not so good for his teammate Mika Hakkinen, who kicks up a lot of wheel spin there. That opens the door for Eddie Irvine to overtake him. And now it's Hakkinen under pressure from Schumacher as well. That rises for David Coulthard to build out quite a good lead here. We see the cars all scrambling down the back straight there, side by side, into turn 3. Hakkinen holding the inside line against Schumacher, but Schumacher just edges out enough space and has opened the door for the Jordan to make a move as well. Again, wheel to wheel through the corners here. The drivers not giving themselves much inch here, just battling for position. Hakkinen has lost out big time at the start of the race here, but it's Coulthard who's gained the most, managing to build on quite a substantial lead to the Ferraris behind him. The drivers just now starting to settle down, all hanging in their rear wings there. They know there's still plenty of time to play for. No need to make harsh action at the start of this race. 29 laps of racing still, plenty of time to get moves done. All filing single file down down the road here. Looks like a driver in the back there just making an overtake opportunity at the last second. One of the Minardis there diving up the inside and holding that position. A little bit of iciness popping up at the back of the race here. As one of the Arrows dives up the inside of the Tyrrell as well. Wheel to wheel, it's a fast left-right complex here. Let's see who holds on. They don't give each other room at all. They are holding it flat through that section. No driver wants to concede on this opening here. As it looks like Gio Rubens Barrichello and the Stewart is going slowly as well. There's some debris there. I think there's some contact. As Rubens had to pull over through a line of traffic there. That was a little bit dangerous. Let's see the replay on that. Running on board from Ross's perspective, you see there's just some contact up ahead, debris flying up in the air. And then Barrichello, you're going to see him, he has to pull over swiftly on the right. That's almost contact with the Minardi as well. And yeah, it looks like someone just broke the rear wing there. That is a little messy on the opening lap there. That could have ended a lot worse with Barrichello pulling off sharply on the right there. And here we see one of the Jordans leading two Saubers or two Benetons there in the background there. Looks like with the Sauber driver diving up the inside, that's Alesi on Fisichella going side by side through the final couple of corners, but they're not eager to yield yet. Fisichella holding that inside line and trying to force Alesi out wide. There's just enough space to squeeze a Formula 1 car there, and Alesi takes it. Outside becomes inside, pushing Fisichella to that line, but Fisichella doesn't give up so easily there. Wheel to wheel down the straight. It's a drag race. Who has more horsepower? Looks like it's just that Sauber who's able to pull ahead and break in front of Fisichella, edging him out of position there, and a fine overtake on lap 5 here. Of course, that's played wisely into the hands of the Jordan as well, who builds out quite a substantial lead. Riding on board then with the Stewart, and you see, the Williams ahead just gets a little out of shape there. I think that was just driver error from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Just pushing a little too hard with the full tank of fuel. It's just not the kind of mistakes you want to be making in this early after race, but this is kind of what we expect in the opening rounds of the season. Drivers trying to accumulate through the changes in the vehicles, trying to establish themselves, and just finding the limits once they get out on the racetrack there. And that's a Ferrari off. That looks like Eddie Irvine has spun there. That cedes positions to his teammate and Mika Hakkinen as well. We were just talking about these mistakes in the opening rounds of the season, and that just exemplifies just how rusty these drivers can be into the first round. They're trying to find their footing, and as we ride on board, you're going to see Eddie Irvine. I think he just puts a little too much power down. Yes, he does. It just snaps away from him. He's asking too much of the car with a full tank of fuel there, and he's swiftly punished. Luckily not to end in the barriers there. That does open up a round of pit stops. David Coulthard opportunistic, knowing that the cars behind him now have a much larger gap. And indeed, Ferrari react, as well as Jordan, Sauber, and the Benetton. Everyone dives into the pits. Looks like that's Eddie Irvine taking the early pit stop there as well. He's going to be kicking himself knowing that he just gave that pit stop gap up to David Coulthard. And here we there have Ferrari and McLaren battling into the pits as well. That's Schumacher on Hamilton. Schumacher leads Hakkinen into the pits there. The pit crew all diving out at once. Let's see who makes out the faster stop. Ferrari's quick, but I think McLaren is just a little bit quicker. And indeed they are. Schumacher loses the position to Hakkinen. It was a pure strategy battle, and McLaren have come out on top. I wonder if this has deeper implications for the rest of the season. Let's see where they rejoin. It's going to be hairy. There's a lot of traffic on track here, but it looks like there's just about a gap there ahead of the Williams for both the drivers to emerge in, and indeed they do. About as much clean air as you could expect at this phase of the race, as the Arrows are battling with Jacques Villeneuve, and the Arrows driver locks up there, ceding position to Jacques Villeneuve. I think we're going to see on board from his perspective as well. Looked like it was just a bit of a forced error. You see Villeneuve diving inside and out, filling the mirrors of the Arrows ahead of him. And then indeed, yeah, we're just going to see that lockup as we hit the apex. That opens the position up nicely for Villeneuve. Side by side then, it's Tyrrell on Sauber. All these midfield drivers, you see them packed in closely there. And indeed, he gets the move done quite easily, trying to hunt down the Jordan ahead of him. It's a long race still, but we're running slightly out of time as the drivers are all jockeying for position. Taking a look at the pit stops then, it's Coulthard, Hakkinen, Schumacher, and Irvine who have all made their stops at this phase of the race. Hill and Ralf Schumacher in the midfield have made their stops as well. Alesi, Fisichella, Herbert, and Villeneuve, the last few who have. Only one DNF so far, that's Rubens Barrichello. We see a bit of action in the midfield here. The drivers just trying to scrap for position, but just trying to find some clear track position to make their pit stops. Riding on board with Alex Wirtz, one of the only drivers not to stop so far in this race. The two behind him, Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen, both in faster cars and both having made their stops already, are contending for that second place position. But Alexander Wirtz knows he needs that clean track space to make his overcut strategy work. He's not so eager to give that position up as we would see some other drivers do. Of course, this is his first full-time season in Formula 1. He wants to prove himself capable as a long-time commitment for his team. Sliding around, you just see how worn those tires are. They're not providing that grip. But Wirtz hangs on. He's battling with the cars behind him. He just held up Schumacher as long as possible, but finally he sees that position. He's going to just bask in that slipstream for a little bit, use that to pull him along. And in fact, he's pulling up next to Michael Schumacher as well. Dives to the inside at the last second. He's going to attack the two-time world champion there, and they are wheel to wheel through the first complex of corners. He just has to give up. He doesn't have the grip to compete with the faster Ferrari ahead. But Mika Hakkinen behind him is going to be frustrated watching this, knowing that one of his championship rivals right now is pulling away at the hands of a backmarker who hasn't made a pit stop yet. This is controversial stuff here at lap 16 of the Albert Park street circuit. Hakkinen just looking for a way to get past. Hakkinen is a very cerebral driver. We know he drives with his brain. He's not very harsh. He doesn't make these rash judgment calls. But he's going to be looking ahead, and he's going to be seeing Michael Schumacher pulling away from him. And in fact, it's giving rise for Eddie Irvine, the other Ferrari driver, to catch up to his rear wing. So Hakkinen knows it's important that he gets past soon. Wirtz rather, isn't giving him very many opportunities to get past, though. Wirtz is holding up all these drivers here without having made his pit stop yet. We see Schumacher has now built up quite a gap, using this to his advantage. That's 0.2 of a second, the gap between Hakkinen and Irvine. Hakkinen needs to get past soon. Wirtz isn't going to be able to hang on too much longer with those old tires in the slower car. And indeed, Hakkinen dives to the inside there, and you see how defiant he is, just pumping the brakes as soon as he gets past Wirtz. He is not happy with the driver that he just passed, the Benetton driver, who is now under pressure from Eddie Irvine. Irvine now getting a taste of what the other drivers have been through. We're seeing this pattern develops. How is the Irishman going to tackle this same pattern of driving that we saw Schumacher and Hakkinen deal with? Irvine hanging in that slipstream for a while yet. Looks like Wirtz dives to the inside early. Is he going to defend into turn one? He has to know that his tires aren't hanging on now. Look how slippery that Benetton is as we round the first complex of corners, but it's still Wirtz out ahead. Taking a look at the pit stops now, we see that Wirtz is one of the only drivers who hasn't stopped. Right next to him, Ricardo Rosset down in P6. Everyone else has made pit stops so far in the race. It's only those two who have been hanging out on these old tires. Can this overcut strategy work out for him? It is controversial to say the least. You see how much it's interfering with the drivers in the lead here. Keep in mind, this is for the podium position. This is a massive points haul for the championship contenders. Speaking of the other driver, Ricardo Rosset, we see he hasn't pit yet, and he's also holding up a train in the midfield here. Ralph Schumacher and Damon Hill behind him, followed by one of the other Benettons. It looks like it's a Sauber, actually. Ricardo Rosset again hanging on these old tires, just like we saw Wirtz ahead. For a midfield championship battle, this is crucial. We're seeing Schumacher. He's looking inside, outside, hanging in that slipstream, trying to find an opening to get past Rosset. It just hasn't shown itself yet. He takes a look around the outside, but Rosset is quick to slam it shut. The Brazilian does not want to cede position to any of these drivers behind. When are these drivers going to pit? You think maybe around lap 19, a 10-lap sprint to the finish? It's hard to say, but these drivers behind want it to come sooner rather than later. Look how much it's costing them. The Sauber is getting opportunistic there, looking at the inside, but there's not quite enough grip there to make the move stick. Rosset pulling away as these drivers are forced to now battle each other instead of push forward in the race. Of course, Damon Hill, he's hanging tight on the back of his teammate there. They're just bearing each other along, but Hill doesn't fancy waiting much longer. He's looking up the inside of this fast left-hander. This is a very tight complex. It's easy for any driver to make a mistake here, and they go too wide. 2 becomes 3 as the Sauber gets involved as well. And that is Hill moving slowly. He couldn't get the move done on his teammate. Almost loses position. The Sauber behind as well. This is a dramatic turn of events. With only about 10 laps of racing left, anything could happen. This is down to the wire, the final stretch of race here. And these drivers, again, must be asking themselves, when are these backfielders, when are they going to pit? This is disrupting the race. Finally, Wirtz makes it into his stop. The Benetton team serving those very old tires. He was just barely hanging on for grip in the closing phases of that pit strategy. A good stretch for the Benetton driver. Let's see where he comes out in. Was it worth it for him to hold out that long? It looks like it just might have been. He's popping a few positions here as the other drivers are forced to battle each other in the wake. Alexander Wirtz comes out in P11. He's on fresh tires in what's going to be a 10-lap shootout for him. Taking a look back at the front then, it's Michael Schumacher who leads out Mika Hakkinen. Of course, Hakkinen was quite close to Schumacher earlier in the race, but he got held up with those slower cars who had yet to pit. Of course, there's no one between them now. This is down driver to driver. World Championship talents, both of them, in high-caliber machinery. And they're 3 wide in the last corner. We see Ricardo Rosset holding up the pack as well. The Jordans still haven't been able to get past him. His tires must be screaming now. You see how twitchy that Tyrrell is. He's got no grip. He's barely able to hang on, squirming on the exits of the corners. That's the Jordan who gets past him quite handily. Surely he must come into the pits now, and indeed he does. He's got nothing left on those wheels. He has to come in. It's going to be a dramatic finale for him. But not just him, for the Jordans as well, who are still neck and neck. It's Schumacher leading out Hill once again, but this is quite a close train between these two drivers. They are gearbox to wing. There's barely an inch between those vehicles, using every amount of slipstream they get down these straights here. And indeed, it's Hill who looks around the outside initially. Schumacher just nudges enough just to make Hill lose confidence in that move. And it's enough to keep Schumacher ahead for now. But for how much longer? It's yet to be seen. There's not very many laps, but there's enough to get a move done. Hill looking to prove that point as he dives to the outside. They're just about wheel to wheel. Schumacher locks in. There's a bit of a lockup there, but it's enough to keep him ahead of his teammate. The Sauber behind there getting a little opportunistic as well. A puff of dust there. Sauber looks to the outside. He didn't quite have the drive to make it stick. Of course, these drivers are on much older tires at this stage of the race. The cars are not as reactive as they once were. Johnny Herbert there, he just doesn't quite have the traction to keep up with the Jordans ahead of him. And then looking back to P2, this is Hakkinen on Schumacher. Hakkinen diving to the outside there. They are wheel to wheel in the first corner. It's squirrely from both of them. Again, like we said, these tires are quite old at this point. Over 10 laps of age on them. And you see just how tentative both drivers are. They don't have the traction that they did at one point. The vehicle is squirming underneath as they put the power down. A lot of torque in these machines. Schumacher just cutting Hakkinen off from a move there. And then we ride back on board with Schumacher. Hakkinen looking around the track there. He's using that slipstream as much as he can. Again, once more up the inside there. Like we said earlier, Hakkinen is a very intelligent driver. He only goes for the moves he knows he can make stick. And that's proof right there. He's ahead of Schumacher quite handedly. Schumacher looking inside and out, trying to find another opportunity to get that P2 position back. Hakkinen keeps that under lock there. Brakes just that little bit earlier to deny Schumacher for the chance of an overtake. And with 4 laps to go, time is running out for the Ferrari driver. Team radio from Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Riding back on board with Schumacher, he's just holding that slipstream as well as he can, looking for an opportunity. He looks at the inside early. Can Hakkinen hold on there? Wheel to wheel in the first corner. Schumacher just gets his nose ahead, but Hakkinen has more grip around the outside. He's able to put the traction down onto the back straight. Schumacher wants to retaliate here, but he's not quite close enough. I don't think he's going to be able to have an opportunity into this corner. He looked at the inside for a brief moment, but he thought better of it. He just doesn't have the grip at this phase. It's all about tires. This is a high degradation track and a war of attrition in the first race of this 1998 Formula 1 season. Of course, there's only one driver who can come out on top, and that is David Coulthard, the Scottish driver, driving for McLaren, takes the inaugural win of the season. David Coulthard wins the Australian Grand Prix. His teammate who's going to take second, a 1-2 for McLaren. Hakkinen takes P2, and then behind them it's going to be Schumacher and Irvine, the 2 Ferrari drivers, rounding up our top positions. But it's all to play for still. It's not over yet. Schumacher and Hill battling into the final stages. This is the last lap. If he's going to make a move, it has to be now. And indeed, he's looking around the outside of his teammate. Schumacher has defended brilliantly for the past 10 laps, but it's only about who crosses at the very end. And that's going to be his teammate, Damon Hill, managing to edge out, lead at the final second, the final stretch of track, takes that P5 away from his teammate. And then behind them, it's the Sauber and the Benetton. But all eyes are on this man right here, David Coulthard, again winning the inaugural race of the season. And what is a strong start to the season for McLaren Mercedes. This is what they would have wanted heading into this race, and it's exactly what they've gotten. And we see the celebrations now, the team from Woking ecstatic with that race result. Taking a look further down the order then, let's see who else managed to make the top 10. Alexander Wirtz's first full-time Formula 1 season, a P9 finish that looks like that bold overcut strategy paid off for him. Our other rookie this year, Gecki, he finishes P17. It's not quite the heights he would have wanted, but a good start to his career nonetheless. Jan Magnussen, P10 for Stewart, earns them some points. He'll be more than pleased with that performance. Taking a look at our top 3 there, something tells me this is going to be a familiar sight. These 3 are going to round out our championship year this year. The pace of the McLaren and the Ferrari seemed unbeatable throughout the duration of this race.